And good morning, and welcome to Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7 to 9 a.m. Eastern. My name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be your host. And good morning, everyone. Sorry if the internet is still choppy. I'm still trying to figure out why it isn't as fluid. But as I explained to you guys before, I'm going to be checking out some other platforms outside of StreamYard to see if maybe it's the StreamYard platform or if it's really my internet. We'll see. We'll see. But good morning to everyone out there. Happy Tuesday. Getting closer to the weekend. I hope everybody is staying warm because it is pretty chilly outside. And with that, we will get to our kids' corner.
Makes you happy? Meet Lyric, a 6-year-old with every toy in the world, yet something still felt missing, until one day he discovered the secret. One morning, Lyric's mom asked, "Why aren't you smiling today?" He shrugged. "I have everything, but I'm still bored," she smiled. "Maybe you need to give, not get." Lyric decided to try. He picked out some of his best toys to give away. At first, it felt strange, but deep inside, a warm happiness began to grow. At the park, Lyric gave a toy car to a shy boy. The boy's face lit up, and for the first time, Lyric felt happier than when he got something new. One afternoon, Lyric invited kids from the neighborhood together in the park, filled the air, and he felt richer than ever before. Lyric realized happiness wasn't in buying more, it was in sharing. His friends didn't care about his money, they cared about his kindness. Lyric learned the richest heart is the one that gives. Happiness grows when it's shared, and no amount of money can buy the joy of making others smile.
Yeah, very true. And that's something that we can all remember, right? Even as adults. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a physical gift, it can be your time. It could be, you know, maybe taking somebody out to lunch or making them something, right? Or making them and taking them, you know, a lunch and just really spending that quality time. We all have our love languages, right? But for his, it's giving. And for some people, that's what their love language is. They love to give. And so, with that, we're going to go into our prayer of honoring God with our bodies. So, God, please guard our mind and thoughts. God, help me to fix my thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. So, I will think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. God, please protect my ears. Help me listen for your voice. God, help me to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. God, please protect my eyes from sin's damage. God, I make a covenant with my eyes not to look lustfully. God, please speak life over my mouth. God, set a guard over my mouth. Lord, keep watch over the doors of my lips. God, please help my hands to serve you generously. God, help me to do good to everyone, and especially to those who belong to our family in the faith. And God, please protect my reproductive organs. God, help me to honor you with my body. And God, please protect my feet as I walk in your path, God. God, let your word be a lamp for my feet and a light on my path. And so those are things that we need to remember and reflect upon. So today is Tell It All Tuesday, and today is a day where I try to give you guys articles or just different bits of news that are kind of like the standout news, and that's where we're telling it all, telling the things that you may not necessarily hear throughout the mainstream media, some things you might. So let's get started. Now, this is um, an interesting article that I came across. Now, I know it's been contentious, I should say, with people reading the Bible in public spaces or maybe at schools. And this has come up again at a school where they don't want students, I guess, showing the Bible if they bring it to school. It's very interesting. So let's check this out.
Under fire in a new lawsuit that claims school officials force students to hide their Bibles in their backpacks. The suit also mentions a school board director who openly admitted to having animus and biases toward a Christian school program called LifeWise. Here is that school board director in his own words.
I want to make it very extremely abundantly clear that yes, I do in fact hold animus towards LifeWise Academy. It is an organization of homophobic bullies who are active and willing participants in the efforts to bring about an authoritarian theocracy.
So he just said the quiet part out loud. And the attorney for the group LifeWise argues that these restrictions violate decades of legal precedent. Outnumbered interviewed one concerned parent of the school district who fears that the school has interfered with her right to decide how she wants to raise her kids.
It just became really concerning for me as a parent then, when my students needed to seal up their Bibles and hide them at school. And that I just felt like interfered with my right to raise my children according to our faith, and to not hide our faith in all public settings.
The school district said this in a statement, quote, "The district will continue to district-sponsored events simply because you're..."
Oops. Okay, so the clip ended, but it says the district will continue to evaluate any requests to participate in district-sponsored events simply because your client disagrees that those policies and procedures should apply to it. So this is very interesting because it's someone on the school board. It's not a parent in the school. It's a school board, and they are saying they don't like the way the school is carrying out their business. That's kind of interesting because typically with charter schools or private schools, they have a lot more leniency, I should say, in what they can do. It's almost like, okay, as long as you're not breaking any laws, which is crazy, as long as you're not breaking any laws, you're pretty much within your right to do, have what you have at the school. And this is why we sometimes find illicit material in some of these schools, right? That shouldn't be there, right? You should not have any type of child pornography in a school. And that's been proven, documented, because when parents go to these school boards and they start reading these books, those on the school board that are actually sitting in the meeting are like, you can't read that here, like, but you have it in the school and it's available to third graders. Like, what are we doing? But that's happening. But they would have you think you were crazy. Now you've got somebody, as you heard on the school district, going, they're turning this into a theocracy. Nobody's turning anything into a theocracy, sir. Calm down. And by the way, it's none of your business because people are paying to send their kids to these schools. It's crazy. We need to really put better people on the school board. We need to have people there that actually are focused on children reading because, hey, let's remember, because like close to 50% of the adults in the United States have a 5th grade reading level or lower. 50%. Those are facts. It's very scary. It's very, very scary. Now, our next article, we're going to talk about money, right? And some things that you may want to know.
Cash, you need to watch this because there have been some quiet policy changes when it comes down to cash transactions, and banks and even the federal government is watching your cash transactions and flagging them. Now, with this policy shift, it's really been clamping down for the beginning of the year of January. And we're not talking about large cash transactions. We're talking about transactions of cash as low as $200 and up. And so the government is making a shift to track cash payments and wire transfers. And we're going to break down what's taking place. And here's the policy shift. Here's an article from Payments Guide. Vincent target illegal remittances. Trump's executive order in January titled Protecting the American People Against Invasion is in line with his administration's efforts to crack down on illegal migration. In keeping with that order, Vincent said the notice was aimed at countering public safety and national security threat. The agency cited financial activity by Mexico-based drug cartels crossing borders, human smuggling, and trafficking networks, oil smuggling, Chinese money laundering networks, and terrorist organizations. Vinson noted 72 billion in international money transfers last year between the United States resident immigrants to foreign residents per the Bureau of Economic Analysts. While a vast majority of remittances from the United States are legitimate and can provide critical financial support to family members abroad, Vinson previously cautioned that malign actors have used low dollar crossing border funds transfers to facilitate or commit terrorist, financial, narco trafficking, and other illicit activity, the notice said. Spokespeople for cross-border payment companies MoneyGram and Remitly declined to comment on the latest Vinson notice. A Western Union spokesperson did not respond to a request for comment. Cross-border money transmitters have faced some additional pressure during the Trump administration. Early this year, the administration proposed to impose a 5% tax on international remittances, but then scaled that figure back to 1% in the final tax and spending bill. It takes effect next year. The industry trade groups had lobbies against the initial bill, saying it would create a significant cost burden. They also objected to a provision that would have made a distinction between U.S. citizens and non-citizens in paying the tax, requiring some consumers to disclose personal information to avoid it. The remittance tax proposed initially applied to only non-U.S. citizens, according to the text of the May 20th House budget proposal. But the ultimate law calls for all consumers to pay the 1% tax. Now, this policy shift is to focus on activities of drug cartels and also other financial crimes, especially with money laundering from Chinese gangs. And now when you see a lot of this crackdown on illegal immigration, a lot of these people are being humanly trafficked, and some are paying coyotes that are connected to drug cartels to get them across the border. And unfortunately, some of these people are forced to send payments that's also supporting the activities of these drug cartels. Now, we all know there is a shift in policy, especially focusing with ICE and those that commit crimes that are here as migrants. And this large focus is part of this action. And additionally, with what we've seen in Minnesota with the Feeding Our Children fraud that took place, and it was connected with the majority of those bad actors being a part of the Somali community. A lot is being alleged that some of these payments, even from that fraud, was sent and wire transferred over to help support terrorists. And so with this is actually causing flags even with us and our money transactions. So we see now this is going to be increasing when we're going into this 2026 year. Now, this is going to have side effects for those with lower credit scores or those who don't have access to credit, because many retailers and other businesses may try to stray away from cash transactions. So this may make people more dependent on the banking system with debit card payments and credit card payments. And people with lower credit scores may lose a lot of access to certain services, or it may give them a more difficult time if they cannot deal in cash. And even if they are extended credit, it can lead to higher interest rates because of their troubled credit scores. Now, in the month of January, I am having my credit kickoff. It's right here on YouTube, and it's absolutely free. This is a real hold up if a lot of cash transactions begin to be flagged. And when it comes down to it, it's going to be a strong push for credit. And credit, as we already see moving forward in the future, is very important because it affects the type and quality of housing you can get, transportation, like you getting car loans, and even additionally with affecting you getting a job. So that's actually affecting you supporting your family. And with the youth coming up with Gen Z, we see now with a more cashless move towards society, it's going to make it harder for them in the future if we see more push away from cash, because this really makes you dependent on using credit and cashless transactions. Now, this can also have a negative effect when it comes down to your privacy, because many people like to use cash in order to keep their privacy. And that is part of the negative effect why this is being monitored, because a lot of illegal activity happens with cash, as we can see with the focus on the drug cartels and terrorism. So we want to make sure that we are watching out for all of these policy shifts, because it can affect you in your personal everyday life. So hopefully this information was helpful. If you have any questions or comments, leave it in the comment section. More detailed questions.
Yeah, and I really don't think that it's an accident that they're going after cash. I think it's a slow conditioning and getting people to be conditioned to use their bank cards or credit cards, because I know people that are in my life that prefer to use cash when they can, right? Because everything doesn't need to be a swipe, right? Some of us are swipers, some of us, use cash. So it's going to be interesting to see. We'll definitely continue to follow this, but I just wanted to make you guys aware, not only are they following your bank transactions, they are following your cash transactions. I'm kind of okay with the remittances. And it's interesting how they argue like, oh, it's going to mess up the system. No, it's not. What it's going to mess up is the people sending money out of this country. I would like to see a 50% remittance, honestly. If you want to send money out of this country, 50% of it's going to stay here because it's going to cost you 50% to send it out. That would deter people from sending it. But then we would have to make sure that people can't, what do you call it? Send money through the airport. Anything over, it should be anything over $1,000. Um, if you're going through the airport, it should be kind of flagged. Like, what are you doing with $1,000? I mean, unless you're going to maybe buy a car or something and you wanted to put $3,000 cash down or, something like that. But I mean, but that's justifiable. You can call the car dealership and, if they have a question, be like, oh, yeah, this person's coming here to do this. We've already set this up, if it comes down to that. But millions of dollars have been already flown to different countries through our major airports here in this country. So what are we going to do about that? That's another story. Now, the next article we're going to get to is the mayor of Seattle. I don't know if you guys remember this young lady. She's never held a job, but she did graduate from college. So I'm like, she knows how to finish some things up. Lives with her parents. She's the mayor of Seattle. So I don't ever want to hear about somebody saying you have to have experience in it. This woman didn't have a job, and she's now the mayor of a major city. So let's check this out.
Back, y'all. Thank you for watching today. Go ahead and hit that like button, my people. You know that it helps us out a ton. And of course, it helps you because it helps us keep bringing you these stories every day. Now, y'all, you know that the biggest story in the United States over the past, several weeks to several months has been the rampant amount of fraud that has been found, particularly in Minnesota, but in other states like Ohio, California, New York, even Maine, y'all. And now, one new state mayor in Washington state, y'all, she's had enough. She's had enough of the fraud investigations. She's had enough of the people wanting to know where their money went. And she has thrown down the gauntlet, y'all, and told everybody she's not even going to investigate fraud. Because at the end of the day, according to this, I would call her a loony lady. A little bit of alliteration for you there. According to this loony new Seattle mayor, y'all, Fraud investigations is not about accountability. It's not about crime. It's not about knowing where your money went. It's all about dividing and conquering somehow. So we're going to take a look at that, y'all. And in general, it looks like she's come in just in time to tell everybody, y'all, crime is legal, y'all. I think her administration is going to be the crime is legal administration. And it won't be the first Northwest United States administration of that sort. We know that Portland has pretty much had crime legal for, I don't know, 10 years plus at this point. Washington has been on a similar track. So it looks like she's going to keep Washington on that same track, y'all. So without further ado, y'all, let's go ahead and get into it. But before we do, y'all, you know that we are a paralegal school, y'all. We are running.
Influencers posted video outside Seattle area daycare centers alleging fraud. Says she is working to protect the providers. What have you done in those regards?
Yeah, so we're working on that. So we have conversations going on with the departments. And yeah, it's just, I don't think it needs to be explained why it's problematic to have random people showing up to daycares. And I think the fear in the Somali community is real. The fear in immigrant communities are real. So we're taking that very seriously.
Wilson, who has been on the job for a week, says she's not convinced there is more to the story. On Tuesday, former longtime state auditor and Democrat Brian Sontag said he's seen enough to believe an audit of state funding of daycare centers is necessary, given allegations in Minnesota.
Now, he's a Democrat, okay? So I don't want that to be missed or lost on anybody. This individual right here, this gentleman, he's a Democrat, and he's still saying, hey, fraud needs to be investigated. So I know I went on my tirade yesterday about the Democrats. I was like, y'all need to get it together. I know like every single person in the Democratic Party is not turned themselves over to complete evil and annihilation. And I think it's really sad that their party has devolved the way it has. So hopefully more individuals like this gentleman will stand up and do the right thing.
Ohio, and Washington.
Well, there are questions, and I'm not saying they aren't answerable, but you don't know until you get the answers.
Along those lines, have you asked anyone to follow up on the fraud claims either to the Department of Immigrant and Refugee Affairs or SPD?
No.
So as far as you're concerned right now, there's no reason to suggest there's any sort of fraud.
This whole issue is not really about fraud, right? It's about dividing and conquering. It's about making an immigrant community a target, right? There's no reason to assume based on the identity of a daycare operator that their small business is doing anything wrong.
Sontag said these are investigations that can take months or years. Wilson, again, saying she has not directed anyone on this particular matter in her first week to investigate further.
Now, there's been a lot of criticism about Miss Katie. I've read in places that she still gets money from her parents. 43-year-old woman. I don't know if that's a problem or not. I hope by the time my kids get 43 that I'm in a financial situation to still kick them a couple of dollars, no matter how much money they're making. So I'm not gonna hit her for that, y'all. That's a dream of mine. When I'm 80 and my little baby now, when she's 43 and I'm 80, I'll be almost 90 by that time. Hope I have some money to still give to my little baby girl, y'all. But in the meantime, y'all, like I said earlier, it looks like your girl, Miss Katie, is not only making fraud legal, but also, depending on who you ask, it looks like open air substance abuse is also something that she's ushering into the Seattle scene, y'all. Let's take a look.
City leaders insist allegations that the Seattle Police Department will no longer arrest people suspected of open drug use in Seattle are not true. They call the allegations misinformation. This controversy surfaced after a leaked email from the police chief to the department's officers. KOMO's Michelle Esteban went to City Hall for answers and to confront the city attorney sworn into office today about prosecuting those cases. Michelle.
Molly, I learned that actually all of this began with this memo from the city attorney's office. In short, it says the city is going to lean into a Seattle ordinance, all in an effort to treat drug use with diversion programs while reserving criminal charges for cases where diversion may not work. From Seattle's top cop to Mayor Katie Wilson and now the newly sworn in Seattle City Attorney Erica Evans, all three insist allegations that Seattle cops were ordered to halt open drug arrests are not true.
Nothing's changing in terms of policy. Officers still have the discretion to make arrests for folks using. All we're saying in our office is we're going to follow the law.
And lean into a city ordinance already on the books that emphasizes treatment over prosecution.
We got to look at this problem as if this was a loved one that's suffering, and what is the right response?
I asked the police chief directly about it. He insists nothing has changed when it comes to police continuing to make drug-related arrests. But that's not how the police union interpreted it. An internal email from the chief to officers released by the Department to Como reads, effective immediately, all charges related to drug possession and or drug use will be diverted from prosecution to LEAD. LEAD is the Law Enforcement Assisted Diversion Program. It emphasizes treatment over prosecution, and it aligns with the city attorney's campaign promise to prioritize diversion over prosecution. And while there may not be a change in policy, it represents a change.
The former city attorney had 97% of those people didn't get any treatment, and they were right back out in our streets. And so the difference we're saying is we're going to change that.
And if they don't, Evans says her office will pursue traditional approaches, aka prosecution.
So with all of these different allegations of fraud, what are the Washington state officials doing about it, y'all? Well, they're investigating, kind of. Their findings, they're not really finding anything, y'all. They're kind of back and forth with this, y'all. I'll let you be the judge.
In a Waste Watch report, we're learning of alleged serious oversight and accountability gaps at the Washington Department of Children, Youth, and Families over the last 4 years when it comes to payments to child care providers. Good evening. I'm Preston Phillips.
And I'm Mary Num. The state auditor tells KEBLA News they've lacked access to provider-level data in the last 4 statewide audits, data that's needed to fully track where the money is going. This comes as concerns about child care funding make headlines in our state and the rest of the country. KEBLA's Michelle Esteban has been following the story. Michelle, a yearly audit is happening right now. Any findings yet?
Well, hi there, Mary. I can tell you questions, as you mentioned, about the daycare provider funding have been swirling for weeks, and that is why the auditor wanted to address it. The audit that's ongoing, she told me there is no evidence of fraud within DCYF regarding what's known as the Child Care Development Fund, but said the agency remains high risk and has oversight gaps last year alone to the tune of $400+ million. What sort of grade do they get over the years, and how do they stand out amongst other agencies?
They are probably the most risky of all of the departments in state government.
State Auditor Pat McCarthy says DCYF is one of the highest risk agencies in state government due to the size, scope, and vulnerable population it serves. She points to ongoing accountability concerns documented in past audits, including this one for fiscal year 2024.
$416 million in unauditable dollars spent by the Department of Children, Youth, and Families.
And here's what the audit reported. By not complying with federal law requirements to maintain adequate supporting documentation for expenditures, the department made it impossible for our office to audit the federal dollars it used for payments to child care providers. Because the department did not comply with HHS requirements to allow for the tracing on grant expenditures to a payment level, we are questioning all $415,579,473 in federal program cost it incurred during the audit period.
We will look at individual providers when we do those audits, but we have to get that information from the agency to be able to do that body of work, and we haven't been able to get that information for the last 4 years.
So yeah, y'all, looks like what we're going to have here in the United States is we're going to have jurisdictions where if you have a certain card, you can.
Now that's interesting because those are federal dollars. Guess what? They can cut that off and claw some of it back. That is interesting that they actually have a division at the state level, right, that manages that federal funding and is refusing to turn over information so they can be audited. Yeah, This is not going to go well. Because see, these states need to realize when you start messing with federal money, those are federal crimes, and they will find you. They will audit everybody. They will shut everything down. Like, I don't think y'all realize. And I think this is the reason why so many people, there are some people that get upset about the entitlement programs, right? Because they say they're wasteful and this and that. But then the other people want to fight for them because there are people that are vulnerable. And I don't think the people that are saying shut them down don't care about vulnerable people. They do care about vulnerable people. They just want to make sure there's no fraud, right? And if there is, find it and fix it. Don't just let it continue on. But this mayor, that is wild. This is her first real job, everyone. Yeah. Never held a job. And this is her first real job. Okay, so we cannot ever say that no one has experience and we have to. No. She's the mayor. Hopefully she will do well. Hopefully she will not be an activist trying to be a mayor. Because if she is, I feel sorry for you, Seattle. But you did this. This is what you wanted. But this is who you put in. Deal with it. Don't call us. Don't get upset about it. You know, I mean, I guess you can do some news reports and let us know, but you did this. This is who you wanted. So now the next article I wanted to get into, and I meant to get into it last week and I didn't. This is regarding Havana syndrome. And some people haven't heard of it. It is kind of what it says, and it happened in Cuba in 2016. It's very interesting because they're still looking into it, but I wanted to share that with you guys.
CBS News, the U.S. quietly purchased a device in late 2024 that may be connected to the mysterious condition known as Havana syndrome. We're told the U.S. government is now testing that portable backpack-sized device that emits pulsed radio frequency energy. More than 1,500 American officials have reported symptoms, including severe headaches, nausea, and ringing in the ears since 2016. There have been multiple investigations into the origins of Havana syndrome, but nothing conclusive has been released so far. CBS News reporter Olivia Gazis joins us now. Olivia, what exactly is it that the U.S. obtained and how?
Sure. Well, 3 sources who've been briefed on this highly secretive acquisition, Lindsay, tell CBS News that the device was purchased by a unit inside the Department of Homeland Security using Pentagon funding upwards of 8 figures, which means multiple millions of dollars. It is relatively small, as you said, and according to what we know, it was a transaction that one person described as Russia connected. It's got Russian components inside of it, and it's Russia connected. That doesn't mean that we bought it from the Kremlin. More likely, it means a black market, an arms dealer, not an official state-to-state transaction. The testing of this device, which, as you mentioned, was bought in 2024 in the final weeks of the Biden administration, has been going on for at least a year, and we're told that congressional oversight committees have been briefed on what these investigators have found. Now, why does this matter? For victims, it's evidence that, one, a device exists, and it may be capable of producing those kinds of really troubling neurological effects that they've been experiencing. That said, we do not know that it's been conclusively proven that this device causes these cases or is linked to any specific case. But there is a broader question about proliferation here. If the U.S. was able to acquire one of these devices, it raises the possibility that other potentially hostile countries may be able to get their hands on one too, if they haven't already, which poses real risks to U.S. officials overseas.
What has the intelligence community been trying to do to understand Havana syndrome?
As you mentioned, U.S. intelligence agencies have spent years investigating what's behind this illness, which has affected diplomats, intelligence officers, military personnel all around the world, including some very high-profile cases. If you'll recall, reports of incidents here in Washington, D.C. involving senior U.S. officials. The CIA director's former chief of staff was targeted in India while traveling overseas. And for many of these victims, Russia has long been the prime and, in their view, obvious suspect. But the intelligence assessments released here, there was a major one in 2023 and 2025, concluded it was very unlikely that a foreign adversary was responsible for these incidents. There was a subtle but notable shift in 2025 about how 2 intelligence agencies assessed the possibility that a device could be involved. That hasn't stopped victims today from feeling incredibly incensed that the U.S. government had this device in late 2024 and yet upheld that judgment in 2025. We do know that right now the Director of National Intelligence has a team taking another look at what the intelligence community concluded, but that review hasn't been given to Congress or released publicly yet.
Olivia Gazis, thank you for your reporting and for joining the Daily Report.
Yeah. And I'm telling you, it's really interesting because it's a device. And I had heard about Havana syndrome and I just thought maybe it was an illness until I, obviously looked into it. But it refers to a set of neurological symptoms first reported by U.S. diplomats, intelligence officers, and other government personnel starting in late 2016 at the U.S. Embassy in Havana, Cuba, hence Havana syndrome. Since then, over 1,500 cases have been reported worldwide affecting personnel in various countries. So obviously, if that's the case, then these devices they're everywhere. Because if it's worldwide and it's not isolated and it's not like biological in the sense of like a virus, we'll just say it like that. It's not a virus. And it's something you could turn on and turn off. That's extremely nefarious. So the victims described sudden onset of severe headaches, it had pressure, vertigo, dizziness, nausea, ringing, popping, and buzzing in the ears, often intensely painful and directional, cognitive issue, memory problems, difficulty concentrating, balance problems, fatigue, and in some major long-term effects resembling mid-traumatic brain injury. So if you've got a normal person and then they're acting like they have brain injury, it's like, well, what is this? Truly. Now, many report hearing a piercing sound just before or during the onset, which sometimes stops when they move locations. Okay. So, and they just kind of summarize the video that it emits a pulsed radio frequency energy, a form of directed energy in the microwave radio range. Okay. And they're saying that the contents are Russian components, though not entirely Russian made. Okay. So, for broader context, the direct injury microwave theory, some victims, experts, and investigative reports, including from 60 Minutes and others, have long suspected pulsed electromagnetic energy or microwave weapons, possibly from a foreign adversary like Russia. A 2022 U.S. intelligence panel found it plausible in some cases. The recent device acquisition has reignited this discussion, with some officials seeing it as a violation that the technology, validation, not violation, but a validation that the technology exists. Because it's like sometimes people are like, hey, I'm going through this, and they're like, it might be something like this, and people are like, nope, nothing to see here. They're not crazy. So this proves they're not crazy. Right. So official U.S. intelligence assessments, major reviews in 23 and updated in January 25, concluded it is very unlikely that a foreign adversary is responsible for most incidents. 5 of 7 intelligence agencies hold this view, while 2 others assessed a roughly even chance or likely that a foreign actor has developed such a capability. I think now that we know that it's out there, it's been us all along. It's been the United States. I'm sorry. It's us. We do this kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, who does it affect? How did it affect them? They're always studying us. We're like lab rats to these people. It's disgusting. But the question is, how are they going to use it next? That's the question. And where are they going to use it? And where have they had success in using it, really truly affecting people to the point where, what if they want to, say, do it in an area that might be low income, and they're trying to make people ill or sick, or make them believe that they're ill or sick because of this machine? They'll medicate anyway, at least in the federal government, underhandedly. How do we know this isn't, owned by people in the medical field? I'm just saying, allegedly. But those are the things I want to look at. So, other explanations, medical studies found severe reported symptoms, but no consistent MRI detectable brain injuries or biological markers across cases. We don't know that. You're only telling us what you want us to hear. Alternative theories include stress, psychogenic factors, environmental causes, or pre existing conditions. Interesting. Yeah, the machine has caused an issue and now it's coming out, and now y'all are kind of like, ooh, we got to say something, because if we don't, the people are going to come after us. We're coming after you anyway, because y'all are just doing silly things. So with that, we're going to take a quick break, and when we return, we're going to get into some more news. We're going to look at some things going on still in Minneapolis, so sad, and some remarks made by Ilhan Omar. So thank you so much for joining me here on Tell It All Tuesday, and I will see you guys on the other side.
A life empowered is closer than you think. We're all looking for a better way. Reimagine what's next with a new sense of exuberance. Why not power on like you mean it? Or power off blissfully? A better sleep is a better awake. You've never moved like this before. The energy nature intended. Imagine reprogramming the way you look at the speed of science. At longevity. At exhilaration. It's next level rejuvenation. Take your well-being from the inside out and outside in. The light within is ready to ignite. Be the light. LifeWave.
Good morning and welcome to Unfiltered Vision News, bringing you the news unfiltered Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. for the next few days Eastern. And my name is Dr. Ashaki Noni Nichols, and I will be your host. Now, remember, on Monday, we're going back to 7 to 9. But for the rest of this week, we will be 7:30 a.m. to 9:30 a.m. And Sincerely Lawless, thank you so much for joining us here on Unfiltered Vision News on X. She says, good morning, founder. And Beyond Skeptical, thank you for joining us and reposting the stream. And Beyond Skeptical says, it's more like open air use when even the City Hall Park is inundated. Police are more social workers with dealing with them. Oh, okay. So you were referring to the issue in Seattle. Yeah, it's very interesting because I remember when I was running for president, people had a kind of like this idea, like we should just let people do drugs and then we'll just help them. And it's like, no, there are some drugs that unfortunately lead people to do things that are very dangerous. Now, do we need to get them treatment? Absolutely. Absolutely. But we cannot leave them on the street. I think that's an issue. I think if I had a child that was walking home from school, I wouldn't want them to see people shooting up heroin in their veins as they're walking down the street to school. Like, no, that should never be. And for people that are doing that, when they're at that juncture and point, we need to intervene and say, hey, you're on the street. Obviously, you don't have a home. You shouldn't be doing drugs sitting out here on the street. That's dangerous. And they need to be put into a care facility to help them and restore them, right? And get them back to being a part of the working class. So with that, we are going to get into our next video, Cash Jordan. He's done a little bit of investigating into what's happening in Minneapolis and putting together like a slight compilation because, you know, you've got people, and I don't know if you guys have seen these videos. It's pretty wild. People actually they blame some construction workers, accused them being ICE workers, and literally almost like kidnapped them as they were having lunch, like harassing them. And there were construction workers. Another gentleman, I think I showed you guys this video last week. He was driving a Suburban, and the lady was like, "Well, you need to get a different car because you're driving the same kind of car they are." I'm like, "What is wrong with y'all? What is wrong with you?" First of all, no. No. I don't know who these people think they are, but they're being allowed to get away with this stuff because they're not getting arrested. I would cry kidnapping in a minute. I'd be like, look, don't do it over here. Do not. Because I've been kidnapped before, and it was a very dangerous situation. So you individuals, these rogue people, I can't call you a militia because you're not doing the right thing. You're doing the wrong thing. You're just this anarchist. I think that's the best way to describe it. But let's see what Cash is talking about.
District. We want them out of our state. We want this terror to stop. The lives of people are being interrupted, and it is not justifiable for the president to target our state.
So, in order to defend fraud, Minnesota's mobs are taking to the streets with the backing of their sanctuary leaders who say they want peace, but are totally inciting something else, which to many looks like a full-on insurrection taking place on the streets of Minnesota and in the minds of the brainwashed, with help from paid armies of agitators, all to protect illegal fugitives and scam artists who may soon be in jail for ripping off our country.
Can we ask you about the daycare? It's all right. Can we ask you about the daycare? $2.25 million.
Get out, you guys, get out.
You all have decided that this resistance is not one that can be intimidated. We are showing the nation that regardless of what the tyrant in the White House believes, this is our country.
Extremely angry agitators try to smash their way into the weapons locker and may have gotten their hands on bullets.
By the way, this is an FBI vehicle. Kristi Noem already said that from the video I showed you guys yesterday. This is an FBI vehicle. This is not an ICE vehicle. And even if it was an ICE vehicle, what are you people in Minneapolis doing? Like, what is this proving? Like, this de-evolution that you guys are doing, you're causing all of this havoc. You're wreaking havoc on your city. Nobody's making you do this. You're doing this. And then you want to blame somebody else? You're hurting us. You're hurting yourself. Y'all are weird. Okay. We'll continue.
And at least one gun. People were damaging cars, smashing windows, spray painting them.
You know, they want to tell people to go ahead and protest, but what they're literally doing is encouraging more violence, whether it's our governor, Tim Walz, who's been a complete failure. But in this case, you don't have to go very far to look and see who is fomenting all of this violence. And to claim that these people are peaceful, Charlie, they're yelling, "Save a life." ICE.
It's licensed for 108 children, but I don't see any footprints of any children here.
You literally cannot make this up. Look at this right here. The people at the center of this fraud scandal, they're the ones saying figuring out what's going on is a waste of money. And what nobody's talking about is when we hear nonsense like this from Representative Omar, from Governor Walz, or any other sanctuary politician out there, these people are not preaching politics. Oh no. Instead, the brilliant socialists of America for their very survival, because with each box of evidence extracted from another fake daycare or health center, the American people grow more and more outraged over the plundering of their future. And what's crazy about this is these same socialists are trying to win the 2026 midterm elections on an affordability crisis they and their fraudsters created and continue to enable, which started 4 years ago with a wide open border that robbed legal residents of the opportunity to buy homes and find jobs, making life unaffordable, something sanctuary cities still do by harboring fugitives. Meanwhile, the same money that's supposed to provide childcare and healthcare for struggling Americans working 2 or more jobs is winding up in the hands of those who hate our country and in some cases aren't here legally either. But that brings us to the real reason these mobs are just taking over Minnesota, threatening to start a civil war that sweeps over our entire country. These people, they're defending crime because it is the platform of their very existence and of their power, which explains why they spend the evenings storming downtown offices, destroying hotels, and surrounding the local ICE facility while following around federal agents 24/7 to try and free folks who broke our laws to get here, stay here, and do not improve America because they're criminals. Meanwhile, the fraud schemes here, they're still happening. We're discovering more of them every single day.
My name is Nick Shirley. Where's tax mobility? Where's the mobility at? We don't care about advanced mobility. We're asking for us. All right, we're looking for advanced mobility. Nobody can help us right now. We got a whole group of people trying to get us out of here. We're looking for advanced mobility. Advanced mobility doesn't exist.
So as Nick Shirley just showed us, you go into a shopping center, it's supposed to be full of these businesses, in this case a mobility company that's getting money from the government to exist and to operate, and nobody seems to know where it is. And the people who might know where it is, well, they certainly don't want some guy with a camera figuring out where it is, so they're trying to get rid of them. This is crazy. And meanwhile, we've got the governor of this very same state that says he's on top of it. No, he's not. And what about Representative Omar?
Republicans have repeatedly stated that you committed immigration fraud. Are you at all worried about a formal investigation that could perhaps lead to your deportation?
Are you one of those people?
I don't know what that means, but are you at all concerned?
Do I look concerned?
I guess not.
Okay.
What about the Minnesota fraud hearing? You didn't show up for that. Do you think you should have?
Why should I have?
Talk about dodging accountability. She's running away from the very affordability crisis her party has created. You have an affordability crisis when you open the border. You have an affordability crisis when you take the money that's supposed to help people afford their lives and give it to fraudsters. But now the question is, why is she out there riding around in the back of a pickup truck rallying the mobs?
How about Minnesota Congresswoman Ilhan Omar? In February of this year, she shot down claims that she's actually a millionaire.
Oh, yeah?
She wrote, my salary is $174,000 before taxes. I don't have stock or own a home. And I'm still paying off my student debt. So if you're going to lie on something that is public, maybe try checking my financial statements, and you will see I barely have thousands, let alone
she says
millions.
She's broke.
Well, people have checked the public records now. Ilhan Omar apparently has a net worth upwards of $30 million.
That's a lot of money.
Somewhere between $60 and $30 million. And get this, it's because of companies run and owned by her husband, who in 2023 had a net worth of $51,000.
Wow.
In 1 year, that $51,000 grew from $6 to $30 million. 3,500% growth.
I mean, if that isn't something that deserves investigation, I don't know what is. What a great business plan. Marry a politician who then helps you get rich. I guess this is why we see her out there stoking tensions, because if people start looking into this, could they find something? And are these mobs out there to stop an investigation? Are they out there really as foot soldiers of this regime, this fraud regime, to protect it and make sure nobody discovers what's going on, to potentially turn the American people's minds against the idea of ICE being anywhere?
Our governor is saying, you know, we're at war with the federal government. Yeah. He claims that he can call the National Guard out. You know, they want to tell people to go ahead and protest, but what they're literally doing is encouraging more violence, whether it's our governor, Tim Walz, who's been a complete failure, or...
Right, that's exactly what's happening. They're saying they're at war with the federal government, and these are the same people who are potentially being investigated, and in Tim Walz's case, definitely being looked at under a microscope. We're literally witnessing a criminal empire fight for its very survival. That's why they're not denouncing any of this stuff. That's why they're keeping these fraud armies on the streets, stoking violence, telling them that they're not alone, telling them that they've got the backing of law enforcement and their governor and their representatives, and we're all behind you, and you're out there defending and protecting your neighbors, as if the illegal alien criminals who recently attacked law enforcement and are here and are possibly connected to a Venezuelan gang are your neighbors. They're not your neighbors. They came into the country without permission. They just got here. That's not your neighbor. And they're here at the expense of the law-abiding. Neighbors don't come into a community and plunder that community somehow by bringing illegal activity to it or committing crime in it and making it unsafe. That's not very neighborly. And it's also not neighborly for people to run fraudulent businesses that steal money intended for the law-abiding to just use it to line their own pockets. And that's the other half of the thing that's being defended here. The last thing the sanctuary leaders of this place want is for fraud schemes to keep popping up, keep getting uncovered. Little mobility companies, little fake daycares, little fake treatment centers, because every single one of those that gets discovered is being run by somebody who's living very well off the backs of everyone else in this country. But now there's talk that the president might have to use the Insurrection Act to restore order in Minnesota, because look at who it is that these mobs are defending. These are the three guys.
Are in custody for what the Trump administration
These are the three guys that attacked the agent.
Murder.
This ICE agent was executing a targeted operation against a Venezuelan illegal alien who was unlawfully present in the country. They used a shovel or a broom. And so, yes, that agent had to use self-defense and take up his weapon to protect his own life. That is what's happening on the streets of Minneapolis. That's what's happening on the streets, unfortunately, of these Democrat-run cities and states where you have elected officials who are encouraging such violence against our brave men and women in law enforcement.
A person's not your neighbor if they came into the country without permission and then they're willing to attack the police who are there to keep your community safe. We need to just get that out there, because that's what's happening. But there's something else going on here. What we're witnessing with these mobs is a hodgepodge of left field interests all coalescing around a common goal, and that would be resisting the federal government. And who are these groups? That would be Antifa, that would be the Open Borders cartel-funded mobs, that would be the hostile insurgents, some of whom are perhaps here illegally, all fighting to stop law enforcement from capturing them and tracking them down and catching them in their tracks, committing even more fraud that we still don't even know about yet. Yet we're supposed to watch these events unfolding on the streets of a major city, and we're supposed to think to ourselves, oh yeah, these are just normal people that got in their car and they were just gonna go get some McDonald's Happy Meals and bring them home to their family and have a wonderful day. And, you know, they saw some military troops that were out there doing something. They were arresting somebody, and without any evidence, they just decided that because someone's getting arrested by law enforcement that there must be a grave injustice happening. So they drove their car straight at those people and tried to intervene and get involved in a situation they know absolutely nothing about. And oh, how heroic, and oh, how they're sticking up for their neighbors when they don't even know who that person was. I mean, this is what we're being told to believe, but this is what we're seeing unfold. It's a total lie. In fact, the defense of this fraud is fraudulent in and of itself.
No, the president came out yesterday and said, look, if this keeps up, I'm going to have to use the Insurrection Act. And for those people who don't know, the Insurrection Act is called for when, quote, unlawful obstructions make it impracticable to enforce federal law.
Yes.
Jonathan, is it time?
I think so.
Yeah, certainly the situation fits the law perfectly, because you have consistent obstruction of the law encouraged by these elected officials. They have no interest in even toning things down.
Nope.
I think it's appropriate, you know, and President Trump has let this go on long enough. And, you know, you look back to 2020, their city burned down because Waltz and the mayor didn't take appropriate action. And I don't think it's President Trump's going to.
Although they did take appropriate action, if you look at this from a certain point of view. Think about this for a second here. You've got this lawless governor who's got all these fraud schemes going on under the radar that he's not looking into, that he doesn't want anybody to figure out about. Well, if you allow rioting and you allow mass unrest, and those mobs are funded in part by the fraud schemes that are happening there, and they chase out the federal government and they chase out the law abiding, what's going to happen to that place? Well, it's going to radicalize, because law abiding families, people that want to run an honest business, people that have something to actually accomplish and contribute, they can't live in a place where you got mobs destroying the whole town whenever they feel like it, while the governor and local police do absolutely nothing. So what happens is you force out your law-abiding residents. You get rid of them when you allow mass unrest. And what does that do? Well, it means that the people who are left are people who agree with that unrest. These are people who agree with massive amounts of criminal activity. These are people who agree with scam businesses being all over the place that DHS is now going door to door checking out. Who are those people going to vote for? Are they going to vote for folks to come in and hold these schemers accountable? Are they going to vote for folks to come in and reform any of this stuff? Absolutely not. And what you end up having here is a perpetuation of power the longer you allow lawlessness.
And so I think it probably is going to happen. I think it's entirely appropriate, and it's entirely legally justified.
We learned this week, Jonathan, that the ICE agent who shot...
If the hateful rhetoric doesn't stop, there's going to be more bloodshed. It's not over, either of an agent or somebody that's steps over that line. Yep. I buried Border Patrol agents throughout my career. I buried special agents. The worst thing I've ever done in my career is handed a folded flag to a spouse or a child.
And you know something? The sanctuary politicians that are behind all of this rioting, they don't care about their foot soldiers who are out there throwing themselves at federal agents. It's very easy for Ilhan Omar to ride around at the back of a pickup truck screaming about how this resistance will never be defeated and how this is our country and we're not going anywhere, because she doesn't have to go anywhere. She gets to stay in that pickup truck and then go back to her $30 million net worth. She's not out there with these mobs confronting the federal agents. She's not out there as a brainwashed individual putting her life on the line for some random person in the country illegally who may be committing fraud. No. So what happens? These politicians, they keep pushing. They're pushing and pushing and pushing. They keep telling the mobs to go out there. They say, at the same time, they say, oh, let's tone down the rhetoric, but understand that we are behind you 100% and understand that the tyranny in the White House can't stand up to you. So, like, they're doing this doublespeak, and the mobs are only hearing the one thing that energizes them.
And obviously, we're referring to border agents and ICE agents sort of interchangeably here, even though they are two distinct bodies. Tim Walz asked Donald Trump to tone down the rhetoric.
Oh, it's Trump.
He asked Donald Trump to tone down the rhetoric.
He hasn't said anything.
Literally minutes after he himself inflamed said rhetoric. What do you make of that double standard, that hypocrisy
it is such a double standard
demonstrated by the current governor of Minnesota?
I would say it's breathtaking, but it's consistent for the course. And yet, talking out of both sides of his mouth, there's been no...
It's called Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. That's what he's doing. That's what this all is. Just saying.
Nobody that has done more to inflame tensions than Tim Walz. I mean, he was just after that saying, record the ICE agents and the atrocities they're committing. He's called them... He's done everything he can to stir things up.
Yes, he has.
And it's so awful because, a lot of us, he's sort of people make fun of him a lot, but they are people that take him seriously. So when he is up there saying things, people take him seriously and then want to act out and try to harm ICE agents and harm law enforcement.
And they're only hearing what they want to hear. They're hearing the doublespeak, but only one side of it, right? And the politician could say, well, I told them to tone it down, but I also want them to understand that they can exercise their freedom of speech. I don't want them to think that I don't support their right to get out there and peacefully protest, which is what the vast majority of people are doing. That's another excuse that these guys like to use. They like to go out there and they like to say, well, the vast majority of people are peaceful. These are mostly peaceful protests. Never mind the fact that there is a moment of silence as the troops line themselves up at the skirmish line before enacting their battle plan against the federal government. Every single one of these things starts out peaceful, but they don't end that way.
Totally shameful. His job is to be an adult, and he can't live up to that job because he should get up there and say these agents have the legitimate right to be here. They are enforcing the law, and if you want to protest, but don't get any. But instead, he wants tension. He wants conflict. He wants violence.
He does.
And it's so shameful. And he's going to be the primary reason if President Trump invokes the Insurrection Act, because Tim Walz
doesn't care.
won't simply do his job and keep his community safe.
Both sides are accusing the other of escalating tensions and causing chaos. And
well, we can defeat that argument right now. That's such an easy argument to defeat because you've got federal agents who are supposed to go out there and arrest fugitives. That's their job. Now, look, if anyone goes to where you work and gets in your face, who's altercating? If you've got ICE agents making an arrest on the side of the road and someone driving by who sees this, stops their car, or worse, drives their car into that situation, who instigated? Who's making the first move? The person who's at work can't go anywhere, right? The person who's at work can't leave. The ICE detention center that these people are now attacking as well, that can't go anywhere. So there's no instigating that's going on. And on the other angle to all of this, we've got these fraud complexes, these fraud schemes. Well, if you're running a legal business and the government comes to check you out, that's going to be real quick. That's not going to be some involved inflammatory process. DHS will come in and they'll come out and that's it. But if you're running some fraud scheme and you're committing fraud and you're stealing, you deserve the presence of law enforcement. Law enforcement didn't show up at your place of business to tear it apart in an unfair manner. No, but that's what we're being told. We're being told that these schemers should be left alone so that they can continue plundering our country, which is just totally unfair.
And what the police chief called unlawful protests.
I'm not sure what's going to happen in the next, month? 2 months?
A new warning from the president about the Insurrection Act.
I haven't heard of it, no.
Is leaving Minnesotans.
I mean, does it switch from ICE to the military?
They have no idea what's coming.
How many times in history has it been used?
Not many.
Political science expert Larry Jacobs says the Insurrection Act hasn't been invoked since the Rodney King riots in Los Angeles back in 1992. It gives the president power to deploy troops for domestic law enforcement, tapping either the U.S. military or the National Guard.
How quickly could something like this happen?
Since the president decided to authorize the Insurrection Act, it could happen
like tomorrow.
Very fast. He would simply sign the papers, and then the action would start to move forward.
So what would that look like this time
wouldn't look
here
like
in Minnesota?
We don't know the exact contours of what the president's use of troops would look like.
Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem called some of the clashes in Minnesota, quote,
I mean,
violent.
That's exactly what they are. They are violent. But the real thing that I don't think any of us understand is exactly what the Insurrection Act allows the president to do and how it allows him to keep the country safe and maintain order. So it says here, according to Google, that the president has to issue a formal proclamation ordering the insurgents to disperse and retire peacefully. If not, then the military comes in. These are all the times when it happened. Look at this. It happened a lot during the 19th century. It looks like 4 times. Then Eisenhower did it, JFK, and then George H.W. Bush. People are going to be hoping that the Supreme Court steps in and says that the president acted in bad faith by doing this. Now, I don't think that the president would be acting in bad faith if he did this at all, because, again, the whole problem here is that law enforcement, federal law enforcement, can't do its job. Can't do its job if it's consistently under attack. Can't do its job if mobs are consistently getting in the faces of these people and putting them at risk, right? That can't happen. Total disorder impedes federal law enforcement. And you know something? By letting these mobs consistently get away with this, decade after decade in this country, a signal is being sent to the radicals who want to steal from America and get away with it and radicalize their cities that's okay. These places radicalize when you have mobs taking them over. These places become permanent left-wing strongholds because the only people who stay in them are those who agree with the violence. You've got to understand that these mobs are a way to transform our country and cause some sort of revolution while calling it a peaceful protest. That's what we're watching here. If you had riots...
Yeah, and that's the problem. It's not a peaceful protest. It hasn't been. If you are destroying property, if you are physically committing violent acts, It's no longer peaceful. Hasn't been. But I think that's the point. They want it to devolve into chaos. And then when the president reacts, and we're like, oh, he's being heavy-handed. People in Minnesota, y'all better buckle up. Because, see, the military, they're not the National Guard. This is like trained military. This is like the Marines, okay? Like real soldiers. Like if you push them, they will take you down. Don't try to like come up against them. Like you messing with these ICE agents and police officers and, you know, they're trying to like, okay, you guys calm down. They're not going to treat you like that. They're going to treat you like a straight enemy. You do not want to go to war with the government. I'm just telling you, Minnesota, you better shut this down. Shut it down. Shut it down. You people need to go home. You need to be no more within 300 feet of any ICE officers at all times. 300 feet minimum. Figure it out. I don't know how you're going to figure it out, but figure it out. Now, there's a little bit more going on in Minnesota. This is at a Target.
We won't stop fighting. We won't stop fighting. The ice is gone. The ice is gone.
Target says that their mission is to support the joy of everyday life for all families. Then do it.
Do it now.
Justice over profit.
Here's the thing. They keep attacking Target. Now, when all the Targets are gone out of your cities and you no longer have the ability to shop there, I don't want to hear it. But, you know, here's my thing. Hey, small businesses, this is your moment. This is your moment to actually make some money since Target is under attack. Just saying.
I sit here not only as a mother or a grandmother, but I sit here as a great-granddaughter of an immigrant. And I sit here and I ask Target, you must stand with us.
Okay, so you're not us. That's not a Black American. You heard what she said. She's the daughter of an immigrant. So you're not us. Just a mess.
You must stop discriminating. You must stop treating immigrants wrong. You must give them better wages. You must give them an opportunity to have housing. You must give them an opportunity
No.
to feed their
Okay,
children.
stop. We don't have to give immigrants a thing, and they need to get up off the soil. Look, illegal immigration is just that. It's illegal. You can't be here. We have over 300 proper ports of entry to come here legally. What this woman is saying is heresy, in my opinion. And I'll just let that be my opinion.
I sit here because this is the right thing to do. That's right.
Yeah, with all the other progressives that could care less about you. You are nothing but a tool to them, a token, because we're not outside. She's not us. This is not a Black American. Okay. And I want to make that clear. Black Americans are not coming outside for this. I don't know how many Black Americans side with what ICE is doing, but I do. And my people are from the soil. And I can trace my lineage back over 300 years. Okay? I can trace it back and have. It's individuals like this that make it look like, oh, the Black people are with us. No, we are not. We are not with you in this craziness that's going on in Minnesota. Now, here's another video that I came across, and trigger warning, it is very violent. Okay, I don't know the condition of this officer, but I'm sure we will be finding out.
Off the car. Get out of the car! Get out of the car! Get out of the car! Now! 299, she almost struck me.
Now, see all this room out here? She could drive this way, right? If she's fleeing for her life. But let's see what happens.
Get out of the car!
Shots fired! You're hit! Show your hands! He struck me. Shots fired. Show your hands! Show your hands! Back up! No, back up! Show me your hands!
Yeah. So the person is still alive that did attack these ICE agents, as far as I know. I'll say allegedly. But she ran him over. She had room to drive this way if she was fleeing. There was no ice on the ground here. The ice is all over here on the ground. She had the opportunity to get away if she was fleeing. Why did she try to run this person over? Why are you even there? Like, what's going on that you were even there with these federal agents? Like, these are federal agents. It's mind-boggling to me how people are like, they're federal agents. Like, you can go to prison for a long time, like 5, 10, 20 years interfering. And these are federal, this is federal criminality. Like I said, it's mind-boggling to me just how the hubris of these individuals and how they think they can just do whatever they want to do. Okay, now these next, well, I should say 2 or 3 videos. This is Ilhan Omar's. I guess she made some statements a few days ago. So it might have been like last week before the weekend.
Thank you all for being here today. I want to thank Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal for co-hosting this field hearing to raise the alarm about Donald Trump's unlawful, aggressive, and authoritarian actions in the Twin Cities. I also want to thank my colleagues who came from across the country and testifiers for joining us here in Minnesota. What we are witnessing right now is unprecedented. There is no modern precedent for this level of federal overreach, violence, lawlessness carried out in the name of immigration enforcement. This is not routine enforcement. This is not about public safety. This is not even about immigration. This is about political retribution. The president said it himself this week. It is increasingly clear that the entire purpose of these actions is to provoke chaos and fear in order to justify invoking the Insurrection Act and expand the president's ability to rain terror upon American cities who do not vote for him. That is the context in which Renee Nicole Good occurred. This administration has unleashed primarily paramilitary force into our neighborhoods, terrorizing families.
Now, see how she starts laughing? Why would you start laughing? Like, that's weird. Like, that's psychotic behavior. It is. Allegedly, I'll say, right? Want to keep it safe on here. But that type of back and forth mentally relate, why are you laughing if this isn't serious? It's really interesting, her body language and her response.
Escalating enforcement and now killing a U.S. citizen in our state. And this is just the tip of the iceberg. Our office has received numerous reports of deeply questionable arrests, individuals detained without explanation, without warrants, without access to counsel, and in many cases without any discernible lawful basis at all.
Because they have deportation orders. She's missing that part.
We have heard of agents pushing people because they look Latino or Somali, forcing them into car accidents where they smash windows, cut seatbelts, carry people away. Abandoned cars with broken windows have become a normal sight of daily life in the Twin Cities. Trump claims operation is about criminals. The reality is even more disturbing. They have deliberately blurred lines between public safety threats, legal immigration, and U.S. citizens, creating an enforcement campaign so indiscriminate that citizens are being swept up, arrested, and carried away to detention facilities. In Minnesota, dozens of U.S. citizens have been taken into custody and released hours later. We have yet to see charges materialize because in nearly all instances, no federal charges are possible. Similarly, this administration has worked to reduce any semblance of due process, sending people out of state, specifically to prevent access to legal representation, separating them from their family, counsel, and open removal processes for refugees with no legitimate legal basis. This is the behavior of paramilitary force operating outside the bounds of law. This administration has been entirely unresponsive. Families cannot locate loved ones, attorneys cannot find their clients, members of Congress can't get answers about where people are being held. In North Minneapolis, doors have been battered down without judicial warrants, as ICE has conducted door-to-door operations with guns drawn, actions that are neither legal or precedented. People have been indiscriminately shoved in the streets, pushed into oncoming traffic, and nearly hit by buses. Flashbangs, pepper balls, and chemical irritants are used without a second thought. This is not the America we want. This is not the Minnesota we deserve, and we will.
Okay. I think this video is another vantage point.
For our colleagues on the other side of the aisle to be okay for the president to carry out retribution here in Minnesota. It is appalling for our Republican colleagues to be okay. There to be cell detentions in ICE for American citizens.
Now, personally, and this is just me, I want her denaturalized and deported. You know, her actions as a representative for the House have been reprehensible. I want her gone.
That our Republican colleagues are not here because they were comfortable in taking money from that would be allocated for food stamps. They were comfortable in taking money that would be allocated for housing. They were taking money that would be allocated in addressing health care to try to fund what is now providing the resources for the occupation that we are experiencing here in Minnesota. $175 billion that could have been provided for so many of our vulnerable communities now being utilized to create detention cells for Americans by ICE and Border Patrol. By shooting an American citizen, a mother, in the face, not once, but twice, but 3 times. By dragging a pregnant U.S. citizen on the floor for everyone to watch. And as Representative Aaron Cagle just sent me, is staging 4 ICE trucks in front of Spring Lake High School as kids are being let out for their lunch break. Our Republican colleagues are not saying anything because they are comfortable for people to be terrorized in St. Cloud, Minnesota, where they represent, in Wilmer, Minnesota, where they represent, in Mankato, Minnesota, where they represent. And we've seen what's been happening in Rochester and in Rosemount. This is not just an occupation that is terrorizing people in Minnesota that live in Minneapolis and St. Paul, which they are comfortable with when the president says he's coming for retribution because they think it's Democrats who voted against the president that he's coming after. But it is all of Minnesota. When my constituents call for help, we don't ask them who they voted for, because that is what it means to be an elected U.S. representative. So it is appalling. It is appalling for our colleagues on the other side of the aisle to be okay for the president to carry out retribution here in Minnesota. It is appalling for our Republican colleagues to be okay for there to be cell detations in ICE for American citizens. It is appalling for them to be okay for there to be checkpoints in American cities where people are asked for their papers. And it is appalling for Americans to have to carry their citizen papers only to be told they are not sure if those papers are correct. I don't want to curse, but those of us who escaped places like that, the one place where we thought we would never experience this is the U.S. goddamn States. And we should all be ashamed that it is the United States that is allowing for this to take place, and it is being forecasted and broadcasted to the rest of the world, where people are calling and saying, are you sure this is America?
We've been asking ourselves that for the past, 4 or 5 years. Is this America? Because our borders were completely obliterated. And people like yourself, Representative Omar, were brought here out of the kindness of our hearts. And it's only been taken advantage of. So when you sit there with your hubris and act like, oh, I can't believe this is happening to us. It's happening to you because you've disrespected the country. Nobody's fighting for illegal immigration, ma'am. Never. Nobody's backing it. But apparently you are. And I am so glad that you've said everything that you've said, because now we know what you stand for. You don't stand for America and American values and borders and it being safe for Americans. You stand for the exact opposite. I will be very grateful when you are denaturalized, removed from Congress, and deported. It needs to happen now. The American people are tired of being, we're tired of looking bad. You're not adding to America. You are taking away. You are. By your statements, I don't want to cuss, but yeah. And you didn't have to. You didn't have to. But again, we know who you support. You support illegal activity. You support wide open borders. You definitely support fraud. You're okay with all of it because you haven't talked against the fraud. You haven't said that we need to have safer borders. Yeah, $175 billion should be removed. You know why it has to be removed? Because $175 billion of it is more than likely fraudulent. And that's the amount of money that's not going to be sent to these quote unquote programs. The American people are exhausted and tired of being taken advantage of. But those are some of the articles that I definitely wanted to share with you guys. Now, this last one we're going to get into, this one's interesting because apparently this has to do with Don Lemon. And there was like a protest that happened at a church, and apparently, allegedly, they're saying he's a part of it. Oops. I gotta add it. Let me add that one. I got a lot of clips today, you guys. So let me add that.
We're back, y'all. Thank you for watching today. Go ahead and hit that like button, my people. You know that it helps us out a ton. And of course, it helps you because it helps us keep bringing you these stories every day. Now, y'all know that ground zero for crazy in the United States right now is in the great state of Minnesota. People are going absolutely bonkers and losing their minds over the ICE activities there, over the immigration enforcement activities there. And I think that today's story is going to be probably example number one in days and weeks to come. You see, just yesterday, y'all, a group of protesters somehow got the idea that a pastor of a local church in St. Paul, there were reports that this was Minneapolis, but this was actually the twin city of Minneapolis, which is St. Paul. So they somehow got this idea, like this pastor, he might have something to do with ICE. So a group of them stormed the church and essentially took over the church while church was in session, y'all. So we're going to be taking a look at that today. And guess who was right there along with them? Now, I'm not saying he was leading this. What would we call this disruption? Let's just call it something simple. I'm not saying he was leading the disruption, but yo, boy, y'all remember Don Lemon, who used to be on CNN, who was unceremoniously let go from that fine news organization? Well, Don Lemon was up in there, y'all, and people are actually saying he might be in some legal trouble for this. I'm gonna let this play out. Y'all will see exactly what happened. So without further ado, y'all, let's go ahead and get into it. But before we do, y'all, you know that we are Paralegal School YouTube subscribers. Click the
Minneapolis, and this particular incident is now triggering a federal investigation. A group of protesters stormed and disrupted a Sunday church service because of one of the pastor's possible connections to ICE. The U.S. Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights announced there would be a federal probe over this, writing this on X. The Civil Rights Division is investigating the potential violations of the Federal FACE Act by these people, desecrating a house of worship and interfering with Christian worshipers.
Now, as I said, Mr. Lemon was in the mix, and listen, he's going to be interviewing, I think this is the pastor of the church. And to me, it seems like Mr. Lemon is being sympathetic to the protesters and defending their First Amendment rights to come into your church and disrupt your service, y'all. I don't think the First Amendment applies to protesters going onto private property, y'all. But Mr. Lemon, the famous CNN news person, he'll be the one to let you know about that.
This is unacceptable. It's shameful. It's shameful to interrupt a public gathering of Christians in worship.
But there were folks who will say,
I have to take care of my flock.
Okay, but listen, we live in there's a constitution in the First Amendment to freedom of speech and freedom to assemble and protest.
We're here to worship. We're here to worship Jesus because that's the hope of these cities. That's the hope of the world is Jesus Christ.
I want to be very respectful. Please don't push me, though.
We're here to worship Jesus. Yes. That's why we're here. Yes. Okay, that's why we're here. Okay. That's what we're about.
Don't you think Jesus would be understanding
we're about
and love these folks?
We're about spreading the love of Jesus.
But did you try to talk to them as a Christian?
No one is willing to talk.
Okay.
I have to take care of my church and my family, so I asked that you actually would also leave this building.
You don't want us to chronicle what happened?
Unless you're here to worship.
I'm always worship. I'm a Christian.
We're here to worship. Yeah. We're here to worship. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Stop that. Stop it. He is married to a man. He is not a Christian. Stop that.
And just to get a little bit of reaction to this, y'all, we have Mr. Paul Chappell. He is going to give his retort, his condemnation, y'all, if we want to be honest. He's going to give his condemnation to this activity. He did say that this happened in Minneapolis. Again, I think he was just mistaken about that. This happened in St. Paul, which is right over there by Minneapolis, frankly. So let's listen to Mr. Chappell. I don't think it's Chappelle, but it might be. Let's listen to what he had to say here.
Today in Minneapolis, Minnesota, a group of activists led by Don Lemon stormed a Baptist church by the name of Cities Church during their worship time. They were screaming and chanting, disrupting the singing and the preaching. because they suspected an ICE officer may attend the church. This is a violation of what is known as the FACE Act, and not only do we condemn this act, but tonight I want to demand that the Department of Justice investigate what took place in Minneapolis, apprehend those who broke the law, and arrest them accordingly. We must protect religious liberty in this country. As people meet to worship God, they have been given legally the right to enter, to worship, and to leave their place of worship. The Lord Jesus said, "In the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer, I have overcome the world." I have preached for many years that there will come a time when we'll find out who are Christians by label and by convenience, and who are Christians by conviction. And certainly we're entering those days now. I believe we should pray for this congregation, and we should be vigilant as Christians to exercise our freedom, to worship our Savior, and to stand unashamed for the gospel of Jesus Christ. And I might add as a subnote that we welcome all branches of law enforcement to Lancaster Baptist Church. And so let us pause before we begin tonight and have a word of prayer and ask the Lord to bless and to meet the needs in this situation.
So yeah, y'all, do y'all remember during the Iraq War? Do you remember the Iraq War in the early 2000s? What happened? We went into Iraq, and Iraq became the place where people who wanted to fight the United States from all over the world, they all went to Iraq to fight the United States. It was just a convenient location. We had troops there. We had a large presence there, and it was acceptable to fight us in the sense of that's what was happening, right? So there were groups of people, there was money, there was organization, there was coordination. I think that's what's happening in Minnesota, y'all. I think Minnesota is becoming ground zero for the not so mentally stable people. I wouldn't be surprised if we find out at some point that the mentally unstable people actually went to Minnesota in order to fight ICE. You know, I'm doing the air quotes here. I wouldn't be surprised if that is what we find out at some point. Like, okay, so if this continues on, it's going to wake up, you know, the people who are out there who are just seething at the fact that people who are in the country without permission might have to leave. They're going to wake up that thing inside of them that's not so mentally stable. And I think it's starting to wake up, and it's like, oh, I got to get over there. I got to do something. So if the Minnesota authorities want to have any kind of semblance of normality, they're going to have to bring this temperature down and do something to stop these crazy protests.
Yeah, because that's crazy. Like, why are you going into a church? Like, what is wrong with you? Like, it's some things are just too far. And that's why we have laws. Just saying. So here's a timeline of that incident. So on January 18th, dozens of anti-ICE protesters entered City's church in St. Paul, Minnesota during a morning worship. So this was this past Sunday. They chant ICE out and disrupted proceedings, accusing Pastor David Easterwood of being a top local ICE official. The service is halted with protesters shouting at worshipers and labeling the church as white supremacist. Former CNN anchor Don Lemon, now an independent journalist, is on site reporting live. He films the demonstration, interviews activists Nikema Levy Armstrong inside the church, and speaks with a pastor who asks him to leave unless he is there to worship. Lemon tells the pastor that protest is protected speech. It remains unclear if Easterwood was present, though some reports claim he was. Now, the Assistant Attorney General, Hermet DeLeon, head of the DOJ Civil Rights Division, announces a federal investigation into the protesters for desecrating a house of worship and interfering with Christian worshipers. Post on X, Don Lemon is on notice, accusing him of pseudo-journalism by disrupting the prayer service and warning that a house of worship is not a public forum protected by the First Amendment, right? The DOJ confirms involvement from the U.S. Attorney's Office, FBI, and Department of Homeland Security. And what that probably, it's not a public forum protected by the First Amendment. So, in essence, what happened, you cannot protest inside the church. Now, you can be outside the church, like on the sidewalk or whatever. You can be on the outside, but you cannot come inside and become disruptive. And what I find fascinating about this, DOJ, if you don't shut this down quickly and send a signal, this is going to happen all over the country. This is a signal that these people are ready to be combative, that they are ready to go inside of people's churches and disrupt them. Now, you're probably not going to try that down here in Georgia. Probably not. Look, because even the people that are like, you know, not like super Christians with the cape on, look, this is a two-way state. I wouldn't try it. Don't come down here with your nonsense. Don't do it. I would say don't do it anywhere. What are you thinking? It's very crazy. Now, Delon vows to pursue charges against some protesters and reiterates criticism of Lemon's role. The DOJ expands its probe into potential obstruction of law enforcement by Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Mayor Jacob Frey, possibly under the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances, which is the FACE Act, right? Don Lemon responds to the DOJ's notice in statements to media outlets, calling it telling that he is being framed as the face of the protest despite other reporters being present. In a separate podcast interview, Lemon doubles down by criticizing the churchgoers as entitled due to white supremacy and defending the protesters' actions. This is why you're the poster child for this, because you put yourself at the forefront. You're weird. You do things and then cry victim when people call you out on your mess. You're messy. I'm just going to say that, Don Lemon, you're messy. You're messy. It's bad. So, does Don Lemon share any responsibility? That's what I'm trying to figure out. So, views on Don Lemon's responsibility differ sharply along partisan lines, reflecting media bias in coverage. No charges have been filed against him as of January 20th, but the DOJ's investigation includes scrutiny of his actions, right? So, there's arguments suggesting responsibility, arguments against responsibility. So ultimately, whether Lemon shares responsibility hinges on interpretations of his intent and actions, journalistic coverage versus active participation. So the thing is, they were trying to tie him to the protesters that were there. Now, if the protesters were there, but he was in the capacity of just being a journalist to ask questions, okay, but you're interrupting the church service with the protesters. You didn't wait till all of that died down and then said, hey, Pastor, can I talk to you about the events that occurred? You didn't do that. You were actively involved while the protesters were doing their thing. So it's going to be interesting. They'll find emails, I'm sure. So legal experts in the report suggest any charges would depend on evidence of direct interference, but the incident has fueled debates over press freedoms in private spaces like churches. They're not allowed there. Now, if they wanted to record something, they could ask, but if they were told no, because our parishioners do not want to be recorded, they can't record. They can't. Now, I know that there have been times where people, secretly record things on their phone and release things and different things like that. It happens. It does happen. But I'm talking about like CNN can't just like pop up in the corner in a church and be like, hey, we want to do this. It's like, no, our parishioners might not feel that comfortable. Just saying. So we're going to see, where this rabbit hole leads. And I also pulled up the article on, all sides. So ICE demonstrators chase and allegedly assault a right-wing activist in Minnesota. Oh, that's a totally different thing. Sorry. That happened too. Yeah, this is Tell It All Tuesday. So that happened too. This is outside of what happened with Don Lemon, but apparently anti-ICE demonstrators chased and allegedly assaulted a right-wing activist in Minnesota. So for context, on Saturday, Land wore a vest with patches that read infidel and 47, a reference to Trump. He also used a microphone to shout, "Send the Somalis back and go home Muslims." No official reports of Lang's reported injury or assault have been filed with Minnesota Police Department. Lang had organized the march to protest the alleged fraud in the state's social service system. Those charged have largely been of Somali descent. Lang had been pardoned from his criminal activities on January 6th by President Trump after spending several years in jail. Tensions remain high in Minnesota as Trump stated he might invoke the Insurrection Act to quell demonstrations. Wow. This is how the media covered it. Reuters Center called the alleged attackers anti-ICE demonstrators, while Fox News on the right called them agitators. The Post-Millennial on the right showed a image of Lang with blood running down his head. The Independent that leans left wrote it in its headline that Lang described as a pardoned J6 rioter was chased from the protest. Now, CNN that's left also wrote that Lang was chased away rather than assaulted in its headline, and noted that no police reports have been filed. Yeah, it's probably not going to happen because you are in a place where they believe in anarchy. That's just who they are. So there, I also wanted to bring this up that there was an immigrant that died in ICE custody. So apparently, Victor Manuel Diaz, 36, was a Nicaraguan citizen who came to the U.S. illegally by way of Mexico in March 2024. January 14th, he was found unconscious in his cell at 3:35 p.m. and declared dead at 4:09 p.m. after medical services attempted life-saving measures. ICE said that he died of a presumed suicide, although his official cause of death is still under investigation. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz on X calling for an investigation into his death. Diaz is the second person to die in this facility since the start of 2026. Geraldo Lunes Campos, a 55-year-old immigrant from Cuba, died while experiencing medical distress on January 3rd, according to The Guardian on the left. His death is being investigated as a potential homicide, as the medical examiner determined his cause of death was related to neck and chest compression, and a fellow detainee alleged that he saw guards choking Campos. Now, this is separate than this situation. So The Guardian highlighted in the headline that Diaz was the second person to die in this facility in 2 weeks. CBS News on the left noted that as of Thursday, the day after Diaz's death, ICE had about 73,000 people in detention, which is the highest level ever recorded by the agency. Washington Times on the right reported that both Diaz and Campos' deaths are at the facility, and Breitbart Wright noted calls for investigation from various Minnesota officials reported on Diaz's death, as well as another detainee who died in a Georgia ICE facility in early January, noting that the American Civil Liberties Union also has recently criticized the Texas facility for inhumane conditions. Guess what? Get off the soil. You don't need to be here. Like, I don't even like the fact that we have to have that our tax dollars are paying for these detention centers. I want to. You have deportation orders that day. Get them out of here. But they have to hold them in a facility so they have so many of them and then fly them out. Get off the soil. You don't belong here. You don't belong here. And people that are fighting for people to break the law and stay here, it's disgusting. It is really gross. And I just, we just went over that whole church disruption in Minneapolis. And it's becoming a disgrace, really, for us to be citizens in a country that is free, where we really want to care for people who are disadvantaged, give them a way to make it. That's what the country is about. But you cannot do it overwhelming our system with people here illegally. And by the way, Representative Omar, had the police department worked with ICE and not released these individuals in the public, you wouldn't even have this issue that you're having right now. But see, you come from a war-torn country. That's where you come from. And I remember some of your videos a couple months back saying, oh, I don't have to leave her. I can live wherever I want. That's great. That's great. And I'm hoping you get deported right back to Somalia because that's where you belong. Why don't you go back there and fix your country? Why are you here? Go back. You actually do have a place to go back to. See, we don't want to become a war-torn country. We do not want people fighting our officers and being lawless here. But see, you like that lawless part, but that's where you're from. That's your culture. That's what your people do. And you and anybody else that thinks like you and has that value system needs to go back to their country. Period. You don't align with us. You just don't. And I'm okay with it. And with that, we're going to end the broadcast for today. Thank you guys so much for joining me here on Unfiltered Vision News. We will be back tomorrow with our Women in Wellness Wednesday. It will be open mic. So anybody who would like to be on the broadcast, you don't have to show your face. You can actually be here with your voice, right? And just let me know. But again, we will be having Women in Wellness Wednesday tomorrow, and it will be open mic. So thanks so much for joining me here today. And remember, stay well, stay focused, and stay unfiltered. We'll see you in the next one.